Okay, and welcome to the final installment of Mr. Basile Explains Sophocles' Oedipus Rex, or King Oedipus. This is the fifth of 5 mini lectures, and we're starting with the final section of the play here, where the attendant enters from the palace. So, the the interesting part about all of this here is the attendant actually recounts all of these awful events to everyone. So rather than seeing what has occurred, it's recounted to us. So we don't actually watch Oedipus blinding himself or Jocasta hanging herself, and yet we still see it in our mind's eye, which is an interesting way to present this. And I suspect that Sophocles probably chose this for a couple different reasons, but maybe one just because he's a genius. So, the attendant comes out and says, not all the waters of Ister, the waters of faces, can wash this dwelling clean of the foulness within, clean of the deliberate acts that soon shall be known, of all horrible acts most horrible, willfully chosen. So this circles back to the idea that, listen, the worst has yet to come, because before these previous acts, well, those were fated. So yes, they're bad, and yes, he's held accountable for them, and she's held accountable too. But the acts that followed those, and coming to an understanding of what the truth really was, is even worse now because of all of the things that have occurred. And the chorus is like, well, haven't we already wept enough? How much can you tell us? And well, first off, Yocasta's dead, the queen's dead. Seriously, why, right? Her own hand did it. You that have not seen, so again, there's our motif of sight and seeing, and shall not see this worst, shall suffer the less. But that I that saw will remember, and will tell what I remember of her last agony. So it's pretty brutal, really. You saw her cross the threshold in desperate passion, straight to the bridal bed. She hurried, fastening her fingers in her hair. There in her chamber, the doors flung sharply to, so she, closes and locks the doors. She's screaming and crying and pulling at her hair. And she cried aloud to Laius, long since dead, remembering the son she bore long since, the son by whom the sire was slain, the son to whom the mother bore yet other children, fruit of luckless misbegetting. Yes, absolutely. It's pretty horrific to think about the fact that she had a son, and then with that son had more children, right? And you can't get more luckless than that. The twice confounded issue of her wifehood, husband begotten of husband, child of child. Laius gave birth to Oedipus, and Oedipus gave birth to her other children. So much we heard. Her death was hidden from us before we could see out her tragedy. The king broke in. So, they didn't really know, and that's the last thing they heard. And then he breaks in, and he's crying for a sword, and he's crying for a wife. And then he says, no wife of mine, that soil where I was sown, and whence I reaped my harvest. So that's pretty awful. Again, referring to the incest. All thus he raved, some demon guided him. No one wanted to speak, no one wanted to go near him. It's just crazy, right? And then he breaks down the doors and stumbles in, and there she is, a strangled woman swinging before our eyes. And with heart-rending groans, he unties the rope and lays her on the ground. So here's his mother, who has been his wife for 20 years, right? And he sees her, and so he's crying and weeping, and he's upset enough, and now he sees her, she's dead because of him, because of his actions, really, right? And it says, but worse was yet to see. There's the motif. And her dress was pinned with golden brooches, which the king snatched out and thrust from full arm's length into his eyes. So he takes these pins, these brooches, right? These golden pins, and extends his arms and then just starts thrusting and ramming these pins into his eyes again and again and again. And while he's doing this, he's not just crying out in agony. He's crying out all of these things here. He says, eyes that should see no longer his shame, his guilt, no longer see those they should never have seen, that would be his children, nor see unseeing those he had longed to see, his parents. How could he face his parents now? Adoptive or biological? Like, how could he ever see them and face them again, right? Henceforth, seeing nothing but night. To this wild tune, he pierced his eyeballs time and time again, till bloody tears ran down his beard, not drops, but in full spate, a whole cascade descending in drenching cataracts of scarlet rain. It's such a visceral image. I love it. I'll be honest, I love it. I think it's awesome, right? And it's horrifying. It's painful to listen to. It's painful to imagine. And it's a suffering in his flesh, and then again we'll talk about his soul is going to be tormented for the rest of all time. Now, what's interesting, if you're familiar with the Greek concept of the afterlife and the underworld, you know that whatever position or state your body is in when you die, and your funeral, assuming your funeral rites are attended to properly, in the afterworld you remain in that same state. So Oedipus won't be able to see anyone in the afterlife either. So he won't actually have to face his father that he killed and his mother that, well, incest, what have you. And, the attendant goes on, thus two have sinned, and on two heads not one, on man and wife falls mingled punishment. Their old long happiness of former times was happiness earned with justice. Like they used to be justified in their happiness, but today calamity, death, ruin, tears, and shame. All ills that there are names for, all are here. Yeah, absolutely, right? And so the course is like, well, where's Oedipus? How is he? And she's like, the attendant's like, well, listen, he's the father's murderer and the mother's, if shame forbids the unholy word. That's a cute little translation there. Incontinently, he will fly the country to rid his house of the curse of his own lips. So he plans on heading out of here, but he's got no strength. He's no one to guide him. He can't bear the pain. And you shall see, right? And yes, so the truth will be in front of you, right? The doors are opening. Yes, you shall see a sorry spectacle that loathing cannot choose but pity. So you might hate him for all that he's done. He is I guess you would say, shame incarnate, really, right? I mean, if Tiresias is truth incarnate, Oedipus is shame incarnate, right? And he comes in, and the chorus just doesn't even know how to look at him. He's horrifying to look at, right? And so they're right, horror beyond all bearing, foulest disfigurement that ever I saw, oh cruel insensate agony, what demon of destiny with swift assault outstriding has ridden you down, oh tortured head, our tortured leader, I dare not see, I am hiding my eyes, I cannot bear what most I long to see, and what I long to hear, that most I dread. So, again, with they're split. This is like where their heart was riven earlier, right? They want to see him, and they want to hear him, but at the same time they're terrified of him. They don't want to see him, and they don't want to hear him either, right? So they're still split. And Oedipus is in a terrible state. What fate has come to me, and they're unspeakable, right? Too terrible for eyes to see again. So the motif is really driving itself home at the end here, right? Oh, dark, intolerable, inescapable night that has no day, says Oedipus. Cloud that no air can take away. Oh, and again that piercing pain. And this is a beautiful line here. Torture in the flesh and in the soul's dark memory. Of course, it's torture in the flesh and in his memories, which used to be full of the brightness, happiness, beauty, light, if you will. And now all of them are tainted. They're darkened. It was an illusion of happiness. And the chorus, of course, says, yeah, well, you have to suffer this, twice, once in the body and once in the soul. Yeah, but here he is, and he's reaching out to the chorus, is you are you still here by my side? And they're like, well, why would you do that, right? And Oedipus is like, Apollo, friends, Apollo has laid this agony upon me, not by his hand, I did it, What should I do with eyes where all is ugliness? And the chorus is like, yeah, that's true. I mean, you can't have any happiness. There's nothing beautiful for you to look at. Everything you look at now is pretty horrible. And Oedipus continues, where is there any beauty for me to see? Where loveliness of sight or sound? Away, lead me quickly away out of this land. I am lost, hated of gods, no man so damned, right? No one's as cursed or awful or horrifying as he is, right? And then he talks about how being alive is worse than being dead, right? My life has been, rather than being a blessing, it's been a curse for everybody. It would have been a blessing for me to have died originally. And the chorus is like, yeah, we kind of wish you did too. So, truth be told, who wouldn't? Nobody wants to live this. Nobody wants to be around this. It's horrible. Now, shedder of father's blood, husband of mother's, my name, godless and child of shame, begetter of brother sons, what infamy remains that is not spoken of Oedipus? Well, cannibalism, I guess. But that's about it. Pretty much everything else there is names for is a shame he must bear. And when you think about this here, husband of mother is my name, godless and child of shame, right? And earlier when he's talking, when Yocasta leaves and he's like, I won't be shamed by my low birth. I'm going to find out who I am and I want to be nobody else but who I am. Well, maybe not anymore. Yet to my thinking, this act was ill-advised. It would have been better to die than live in blindness. And that's where Oedipus is like, yeah, but how would I face them? Why would I want eyes to see my father and my mother? I've done horrible things. Look, there's death is no way to pay for that. There has to be worse things to do. And would I want to see my children again now that I know how I had them? Right? Like, it's horrible. So he's done that, and now he wants them to follow through on all of the curses that he laid on his own head. If he had any way to stop all of his senses, he says he would do that. Had I any way to damn that channel too, I would not rest till I had prisoned up this body of shame in total blankness. It's pretty freaking cool. Now it goes on to say, Citharon, and then he calls out to Citharon and Corinth and Polybus, and did anybody know how horrible I would be? The cops beside, I watered with my father's blood, my blood. Will they remember what they saw? What I came that way to do, and the unspeakable acts. I speak no more of them. Hide me at once, for God's love, hide me away, kill me. Can't really blame him. And they shrink from his groping hands because they don't want any of his guilt, any of these horrible feelings, and literally the blood that's on his hands, they don't want it on theirs either. By grasping his hand, it would be very similar to what happened to Heracles in Euripides, I believe, his play. I think it was Euripides' play, where he has the blood of his children on his hands, and he's asking for forgiveness after doing it, in a state of madness. And Theseus, the king of Athens, very famous king of Athens, he and a great hero in his own right, reaches out and extends his hand and takes Heracles' hand in his own as a sign that he's going to bear the shame with him. And that concept is kind of mirrored here, because you'll see that, they shrink from his, and he says, touch me and have no fear. On no man else but on me alone is the scourge of my punishment. So, don't worry, I'm not going to drag you into this with me. I just need your help to guide me. I can't see, right? And then Creon comes back, because now, hey, he's got to be king, right? And Creon is a benevolent to a fault, maybe? I mean, he's so kind to a man that banished him, that wanted him dead, right? Falsely so, falsely accused, unjustly judged by you alone, right? He heads off. Says, he comes in and he's like, hey, I'm not here to mock you. And Oedipus can't even believe his own good fortune, right? And he begs to be thrown out of the land. And Creon's like, yeah, we'll do that, but we're going to get some more instructions from the gods because this is crazy, right? And Oedipus is like, well, isn't it obvious? And he's like, well, haven't you learned to trust the gods already? Like, what's wrong with you? And he's like, are you really going to ask God's direction for one so damn? And he said, really? Like, haven't you figured out that you should trust the gods yet? Which is kind of an interesting subtext to all of this when you think about it. So one of the kind of subtler messages in the play, or maybe not so subtle depending on your interpretation, is that we need to have faith in the gods. Because when you don't have faith in the gods, you end up like Oedipus or Yocasta, hubristically thinking you're beyond the touch of gods, beyond the touch of fate, beyond the reach of anything mystical or magical, and all of that stuff is just bunk anyway. And yet, at the end, it all comes crashing back down, and we show that old oracles are not out of mind, right? Apollo's name is upheld; it's not denied, right? It's all true. So we're back to Mount Citharon, which is a name that will be forever linked with him. And then he begs to just be able to see touch his children once more and pretend that he had them once more before his eyes, right? And Ismene and Antigone, they're already there. And he hears his little darlings, right? And these lines are fantastic, right? He thanks Creon for letting him bring in, and he says, where are you, children? Come, feel your brother's hands. It was their work that darkened these clear eyes, your father's eyes, as once you knew them, though he never saw nor knew what he did when he became your father. Oh my goodness, it's amazing, isn't it? Because he was their father until he knew he was their brother, and at that point he takes his eyes away from himself so he can no longer see them. He blinds the father's eyes because he now realizes he's not a father, he's a brother to his children, right? And so when he does that, he takes away his sight. They cannot see you, but they weep with you. And then he goes on to talk about how joyless and how awful their life's going to be because there's such a horrible curse on everybody who's related to him, and nobody's going to outface this scandal. There's no way to outface it. It's impossible, right? And then Creon gives his hand to him and pledges to help him, and see that this is all carried out and take care of the children for him. And Oedipus is like, so you promise you'll send me away? And Creon's like, yeah, the gods will decide, not me. No god will speak for me. Well, then you'll have your wish. Like, don't worry about it. And your consent. Listen. Creon's like, listen, I'm not speaking beyond what I already know, and I'm going to wait till I get word from the gods. And satisfied but reluctantly, right? Take me, right? And Creon's like, go then. But leave the children. No, never take them from me. And then, boom, right here, the complete reversal of situation itself. Command no more, obey, your rule is ended. So Creon completes the tragedy and takes it from being a beautiful reversal of fortune and almost up to this point, it's very close to a complete reversal of situation too. And right here, the rule is ended. Boom, very clearly stated, complete and total reversal of situation as well, making it the ideal and perfect tragedy. And at the end, we have the chorus comes out in their final stasimone. Sons and daughters of Thebes, behold, this was Oedipus, greatest of men. He held the key to the deepest mysteries, was envied by all his fellow men for his great prosperity. Behold, what a full tide of misfortune swept over his head. Then learn that mortal man must always look to his ending, and none can be called happy until that day when he carries his happiness down to the grave in peace. Those last two lines are pretty powerful. And none can be called happy until that day when he carries his happiness down to the grave in peace. I mean, case in point, Oedipus, here's the guy. Everybody wanted to be him. He was amazing. He was great. Everybody looked up to him. Everybody loved him. And look at how awful his life actually was. Horrible. It's the worst life you could possibly imagine. I mean, most of us would probably choose death rather than to live Oedipus's life. It's pretty horrific. And so when you come out and say this, right, you always have to look to your ending. You always have to be aware that maybe your happiness is not complete. Maybe it's not full. Maybe it's illusionment followed by disillusionment, right? And that's what they had spoken earlier. So we come back to that again, kind of revisiting that idea. But I suppose that ends the explanation/reading of Oedipus the King, or Oedipus Rex, what have you. All right, hopefully these 5 little mini lectures helped you study and or understand this play a little better. You can always feel free to email me if you have questions. Have a great day.